Good Tuesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a great afternoon. Browns will report to Berea the next couple of days. Quarterbacks, rookies, then veterans. Then they'll get on a plane and they'll head to West Virginia, the Greenbrier, for the first full squad workout at training camp on Saturday. Damian Woody, former offensive lineman in the NFL, Mike Greenberg, ESPN's Get Up, talking about what they think may happen with Deshaun Watson this season.
People need to understand, when we last saw Deshaun Watson a full season with the Houston Texans, Deshaun Watson was the top 5 quarterback in this league. I mean, listen, he dealt with suspension, obviously, last year out 11 games, but now he's had a full offseason, and they added some pieces to that. I think Deshaun Watson going to come back and going to surprise a lot of people this year.
Only the people who haven't paid attention, to your point. You shouldn't be surprised by the season that I agree with you completely. I think he's such a complicated player to talk about because of the circumstances, but his greatness on the field has never been in question. I agree with you. He's a dangerous guy, and they're a dangerous team.
With that, let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Mary Kay, the reason I play that, it's kind of interesting. The guys who have played in the league, the former players that are on these national shows, are the ones that expect Deshaun Watson to come close to what he was before the 2-year layoff. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, people do remember what Deshaun was on the football field. A lot of people do recall that. I think it's the people that are a little bit more concerned about the off-the-field issues and aren't really ready to buy into the whole Deshaun Watson thing yet. That's where you get, some of the snub and, some of the issues with him showing up at number 26 on power rankings or number 28. And I wrote a whole story about that the other day about, how will he handle the snub? But certainly you've got some national people, as you mentioned, like former players that don't see it that way.
I know you've also written an article. It's part of the 23 Browns questions for 23. Can Kevin Stefanski maximize Deshaun Watson's playmaking ability, do you think?
Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest question marks heading into the 2023 season and heading into training camp. Is Kevin Stefanski the guy? I'll tell you what, I have so many people that email me questions, say things on Twitter where they wonder about Kevin. Is he on the hot seat? Can he do this? There are a lot of people that are skeptical about Kevin Stefanski. I'm in the camp where let's see what he can do now that he finally has an elite quarterback to work with. He's done everything possible this offseason to make sure that this is successful. He's talked to Deshaun Watson's former coaches. He's added Bill Musgrave. He's made Alex Van Pelt the quarterback's coach. He's retained play calling duties for himself. He's worked very closely with Deshaun Watson to give him more autonomy at the line of scrimmage and elsewhere on the field. I just think that it's been the Deshaun Watson project, and they're doing everything they can to make sure it's going to work.
Yeah, and you know what? It needs to be, because that, as you said, that is the key. I know you also, you mentioned, you get a lot of these. One of your Hey Mary Kays I found really interesting. What do you think a bounce-back season for Deshaun Watson looks like?
Yeah, I've set the bar high on the bounce back season. I've put it at, 28 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, something along those lines, a rating over 100, 10 or 11 victories, a playoff berth, a victory. I think that's what you're looking for when you go out and you sign a Deshaun Watson and you give up 3 first-round draft picks. You don't do that so you can win 9 football games and sit at home watching everyone else in the playoffs. So that's where the bar is set. That's what needs to happen this year. Also, another Hey Mary Kay. Do you think the Browns should have pursued DeAndre Hopkins harder? Yeah, that's a good question. I probably would have. I think I would have at least brought him in for a visit and just kind of, gotten the pulse of the whole situation and, really demonstrated that they were doing everything possible to try to get to the Super Bowl this year. It doesn't mean they're not. I just think that, why not bring somebody like that in when you have a chance to sign a 5-time Pro Bowler who made I think 3 straight Pro Bowls with Deshaun Watson when they were together. Why not bring him in and just see if he can play a role on this team and if you can find a way to make it fit. But obviously, that's not where their minds were. That's not what they were thinking. They're very happy with what they have, and I don't think they have any regrets.
So I mentioned earlier, training camp gets underway Saturday at Greenbrier in West Virginia. Everybody reports to Berea. They'll fly down together. Who do you think could become the darling of training camp in 2023?
Well, I think one guy that's really going to stand out and pop in training camp is going to be Zadarius Smith. I think he brings a vocal element. I think he brings a lot of energy. I think he's a leader. He's been around a long time. He's got a lot of personality. And I think that he's going to be one of those guys that, talks, gives us great stuff when we talk to him in the interviews. So I think he's going to be one guy. And then I think Elijah Moore is another one that's going to really kind of make his presence felt in training camp, off the field, and maybe even in some interviews as well. So those are a couple of guys I think that will really kind of shine.
Who do you think could have breakout seasons this year? When you look at the collection of talent and what we expect the Browns to do both offensively and defensively, who are some guys you think could break out this year?
Yeah, it's really hard to say, in terms of who could break out because, Amari Cooper, he doesn't need to break out. Donovan Peoples-Jones, he doesn't need to break out. Elijah Moore, to a certain extent, maybe he could have that breakout season because he has to rebound a little bit from his year last year with the Jets where he only had 1 touchdown. So if he can get back into the 5-6 touchdown range, then I would consider that a little bit of a breakout season. And then, Obo, I think that Obo can go out there and prove that he wasn't just this one-hit wonder where you plugged him in at defensive end in Houston at the end of last season and he got these, 5 sacks in the last 6 games. And, and that was kind of an, anomaly. I think that he's going to need to go out there and be consistent. And if he can do that, then he will be a breakout player for this year. You know what? How about, why not JOK? JOK should break out. As long as he's healthy, he's coming off of a midfoot sprain, but as long as he's healthy, he's someone that I think in Jim Schwartz's defense can really make an impact. I
agree with you. I think Jim Schwartz is really good at saying, okay, this is your strength. This is what we're going to ask you to do a lot of. The other guy that comes to mind, and we talked about him last year, I still think David Njoku could end up being one of the top tight ends just because of the way Deshaun Watson throws to tight ends historically. Yeah, you know what? I'll tell you what, that position has an opportunity to really excel this year. So David Njoku, I've said this many times before, and I always meant that he was going to need an elite quarterback to achieve it, but I always felt like he was an 8 touchdown a year tight end. I think he's got that capability. I think he's got that size. I think he's got that muscle to go up and fight against smaller defensive backs and even some linebackers down there in the red zone and the end zone. So, he is talented enough to get those 8 touchdown catches this year if Deshaun is playing all 17 games. So, look for something like that. But, he's got some competition this year in Jordan Akins. And Jordan has a natural chemistry already with Deshaun Watson. So, those 2 guys, I think, should really bring out the best in each other. This is another one of your Hey Mary K's. Again, I found it really interesting. Who do you think we should temper expectations for this year? That's a good one. Maybe it is Elijah Moore. Maybe he is someone that fits a couple of different categories of questions and answers. And, sometimes I feel like we're talking about him like he's Odell Beckham Jr. already. And he does have some of that same skill set. I've even seen him do a number of those one-handed catches in minicamp and OTAs and things like that. But you can't really compare him to a Pro Bowler like Odell Beckham Jr. just yet. So maybe we should temper the enthusiasm a tiny bit. Let him get his feet wet with this team. Let him get his chemistry down, before we put tremendous expectations on him. Yeah, it certainly seems like they're trying to find ways, at least what we saw from minicamp, they're going to find ways to get the ball in his hands, get him touches.
Yes, absolutely. I've seen him lined up in the backfield. We're probably not supposed to say too much about all that kind of stuff, but we've seen him lined up in some interesting spots and doing some things, and they will be creative with him. And he's got the athleticism to do it. He's got the hands to do it. He's got the shiftiness and the twitchiness to do all those kinds of things. And I think he will pair very nicely with Deshaun Watson, who can obviously get the ball to anybody in any situation and in a hurry.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey Dave, winning is the bottom line. So when you responded to my Truth and Reason about creativity by comparing Stefanski's winning percentage to that of other coaches, that's not completely out of line, but my comment was about creativity. The fact that Kevin's play calling seems to have become increasingly formulaic and thus somewhat predictable since his illness. I did notice that your reply was once again pretty selective when you said only that Andy Reid has Mahomes, as if that settled that. Because for one thing, Coach Reid has long shown himself to be a very creative play caller, both before Mahomes and before Kansas City. The fact that he was fired in Philadelphia doesn't alter that fact, Dave. Are you suggesting that Kevin Stefanski needs a top 5 quarterback in order to be a creative play caller? To me, it seems like he's mentally lost a step or two, and he knows it. And when he tries extra hard to reclaim what's been lost, it seems forced and kind of fake, and it often fails.
All right, as always, appreciate all the voicemails. So Andy Reid was successful in Philadelphia with Donovan McNabb. My point was it had nothing to do with Kevin Stefanski catching COVID. It has to do with having elite quarterbacks. If you're going to argue that you cannot have a successful offense without having an elite quarterback, you're going to lose that argument. But okay, you can continue to believe that. Mary Kay, again, this caller calls and refers to the illness as COVID when he caught COVID. You need to have an elite quarterback to have a elite offense. I don't know any other way to explain it. Before Mahomes, it was Donovan McNabb. Andy Reid's a really good coach.
Yeah, he really is. I mean, when you look at some of the things that Kevin Stefanski has done in his career, he's gotten a career season out of Case Keenum. Let's not forget that when he was coaching Case Keenum, Case went, I think it was like 11-3, something like that in Minnesota, and took them to the NFC Championship game. He got a career season out of Kirk Cousins in his first year as offensive coordinator, his first full season as offensive coordinator in Minnesota. He got the best out of Baker Mayfield that anybody has gotten out of Baker Mayfield. And he got the best career season out of Jacoby Brissett. So if his track record continues in this regard, he should be getting the best out of Deshaun Watson. And I think that's the goal. And I know he's doing everything possible to make sure that happens. And the number one thing that he's going to do is to make sure that Deshaun is comfortable with what he's running. If Deshaun doesn't like it, it's not happening. If Deshaun loves it, it will happen a lot. And I think that they're really going to let him run the show out there so much more this year and really let him find ways to shine.
Yeah, and all good coaches have that tie to their quarterback. Andy Reid had it to Donovan McNabb. He has it to Patrick Mahomes. You hope Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson develop that without question. You kind of alluded to this in the first segment. How do you think Deshaun responds to the snub? That's part of the 23 questions for the Browns for 23.
Well, if he responds to it in the same way he responded to the draft day snub, then I think the Browns are going to be in great shape with Deshaun Watson. Because I remember vividly back in 2017, all the things that surrounded Deshaun Watson pre-draft. I was the one who actually walked up to Dabo Swinney at the Senior Bowl and said, hey, what if the Browns pass on him at number 1? And he looked me straight in the eye and he said, it would be like passing on Michael Jordan. And I was standing there with fortunately I had my phone out and I videotaped that answer. And so, yeah, I have a very vivid memory of that moment. And of course, the Browns didn't listen, and a lot of other teams didn't either. So he tumbles down to number 12, where the Browns stared him right in the face and said, no, I don't think so. They traded that pick down. They traded down with the Houston Texans down to number 25. They took Jabril Peppers, picked up an extra first-round pick the next year. Obviously, the Texans chose Deshaun Watson. He went on to make 3 Pro Bowls there, and he really remembers that snub. Mitch Trubisky went number 2 and Patrick Mahomes went number 10. So he was the 3rd quarterback taken. Now, nobody can argue with Patrick Mahomes. A lot of people can certainly argue with Mitch Trubisky. And back then, Deshaun was not happy about people ranking Mitch Trubisky ahead of him. And he went out and he made a statement about that. He made 3 Pro Bowls. He led the NFL in 2020 with 4,823 yards. And he lived up to basically what Dabo Swinney said he could be. Now, of course, he had all kinds of off-the-field issues that really, changed the course of his career, changed the course of the Texans, changed the course of the Cleveland Browns. But he went out and responded to that draft day snub with a vengeance.
Do you expect the Browns to play more 3 wide receiver sets, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper? Do you think that's part of the deal here?
Yeah, I think they'll be very multiple. I think they will play plenty of 3 wide receiver sets with those 3 guys, but you've got so many pass catchers on this offense now that you can do so many different things with. You can play, 2 tight ends and 2 wide outs because Jordan Akins is almost like a big receiver. So that's almost like playing 3 wides. So you've got that going for you. Then, there are times that you might play 4 wides. You might want to bring in Marquise Goodwin in a 3 receiver set to get that speed on the field. So there's all different kinds of things that Kevin Stefanski can do. But I do think you'll see plenty more 3 receiver sets and even some 4.
Do you think Nick Chubb gets more involved in the passing game? And I know you've addressed this on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast.
Yeah, I do. I do think that Nick Chubb will get more involved in the passing game. I think that with Kareem Hunt gone, he almost doesn't have any choice but to get more involved in the passing game. If he wants to be involved at all and get those touches, then receptions are going to have to be part of his repertoire. And he will get those targets, and Stump Mitchell thinks that he's got great hands, just hasn't really had an opportunity to show them. And so, yeah, this is a chance for Nick to shine in other ways besides running the ball.
Yeah, you know what? I like the idea of him out in the open field with, having safeties and cornerbacks trying to tackle him. So this is kind of interesting. So no long-term deals for Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs. Tony Pollard did sign his franchise tag. Last time a running back was signed to a long-term contract worth $10 million or more per year, Nick Chubb in 2021. That's 716 days ago. That's from Adam Schefter. Yesterday's deadline for the franchise tag to agree to long-term deals. Both Barkley and Jacobs say they're not showing up for training camp at the beginning of it, so no idea when they will show up. And then take a look at this. Average salary for an NFL running back in 2023, $1.81 million. Average salary for an NFL kicker is more than that at $2.26 million. That according to Spot Track. Mary Kay, that's kind of eye-opening, and you see why some of the running backs are a little upset. Just your reaction to, I mean, that's eye-opening. That's the only thing I can say.
Well, my first reaction to that is that it doesn't sound right to me. I mean, it just, I don't know. I mean, I'd have to go back and look at that. I'm sure it's right, but, when I think of, Christian McCaffrey, and I think of, Nick Chubb's salary, and, Derrick Henry and some of the other running backs, it's hard for me to believe that the average is $1.8 million. I don't know. I have a hard time wrapping my brain around that. And when we are done here, I'm probably going to go study that and look at that a little bit more. But I think it just goes to show it's a passing league, and the run has come into vogue a little bit more in recent years, but running backs are not a premium marquee position. You don't really have to pay them. You don't really have to draft them very high. You can find them. Now, Nick Chubb is special, and some of those other guys are special too, but you can get the job done and you can get offense accomplished without having a super highly paid running back.
Yeah, well, and keep in mind that factors in your second and third running backs, some of them are making league minimum, but it's still eye-opening that a kicker, the average salary for a kicker is higher. How happy do you think Kevin Stefanski is that he doesn't have to deal with what they're dealing with the Giants and Barkley and the Raiders and Josh Jacobs?
Oh, I'm sure he's very happy. They don't really have any distractions heading into this training camp right now. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to go down to the Greenbrier and block everything out and not, Kevin Stefanski even said, not have a baby crying at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever the case may be in some cases, in some families there. But, they're really trying to close ranks, get pulled together, bond, get some camaraderie going, and be ready for this what they hope is a very long season, and one that ends with maybe some hardware.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little defense. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
My name is Ronnie Petty, and I'm a big, huge Browns fan, born and raised in Cleveland. I think that we have a good team, but my concern is our linebackers. If we can, strengthen that a little bit more, I think that we'll be able to make some noise this year in the NFL. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Mary Kay, I get people's concern in talking about the linebacker. I think it's an indication of two things. Linebackers kind of become the running back, which we were talking about last segment on the defense. And I think they're going to play a lot of three safeties. They're going to play some 5-down linemen. A lot of times there's going to be two linebackers on the field. Your thoughts?
I think it's going to depend. I think it's going to depend on if some of those linebackers are super healthy, if they can step up and be versatile enough to really get the job done. But if we're talking about, a lot of passing, then, you might go with three safeties ahead of three linebackers and things like that. So I think they're going to be very multiple, as you said, some 5-down linemen at times, lots of three safeties at times, two linebackers at times. But, occasionally you might have Obo kind of playing linebacker, or you might have Juan Thornhill or Grant Delpit sort of playing a linebacker role. So versatility is going to be the name of the game. I think you will see lots of different formations defensively. I think you'll see lots of rotating to keep guys fresh. And, just hopefully in the beginning, it will be simple enough for everyone that they can pick it up and they can understand the new terminology and what Jim Schwartz is trying to do without them kind of confusing themselves.
So I know this is something you covered in the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. How do you think Zadarius Smith and Okunrankwo transform the defensive line?
Yeah, I just think in so many ways they will. I mean, Z is, in addition to rotating on the outside, he's also going to play a lot inside. And, the first time we see them out there with 4 linemen on the field, it could be Miles, Zadarius inside, Dalvin inside, and then Obo on the outside. And that would probably be your 4 best defensive linemen. So I think you're going to see a tremendous impact from those guys. I think they're going to take plenty of pressure off of Myles Garrett. I think they're going to bring lots of energy. I think they're going to bring lots of personality. We've already seen that so far. And I think it's going to be a defensive line that Browns fans are going to fall in love with.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. Jim Schwartz wants his defenses to play with a little bit of an edge. I mean, he wants them to have confidence. He wants them to go out and set the tone and dictate tempo and things like that.
And yes, and again, I've talked to defensive linemen that have played for him before, that have played for him in Philadelphia, and they absolutely loved playing for him because of what he lets his defensive linemen do. It's fun. They enjoy it. They get to go forward in a hurry. That's what they want to do. Even the defensive tackles do that, those Ferraris that they are. And so, I think they're going to have a lot of fun. And like Zadarius Smith said, he wants to come up with a name for them. Now, maybe you want to get into the season a little bit and see if you actually deserve to have a name. But, but if they do, if they catch fire the way that they might, then, they really could be, the key marquee position on this team.
They've got to believe they're going to be, so go into the season with a name because it's a sign of confidence. I know you've done this on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. How do you think Jim Schwartz uses his safeties?
Well, he's going to use his safeties not as, free safety and strong safety. You're not going to be stuck on a side. You're definitely going to be able to move around and do different things. Depending on the matchups, you might be up closer to the line. You might be dropping back. There might be 3 of them at times. There will be 3 of them, plenty of different times. And, so yeah, it's going to be interesting. Some people have asked me this, and I do wonder about it myself. I mean, Martin Emerson is almost big enough to play like a safety. So, maybe you would almost consider him to be a third safety if you've got, Greg Newsome and Denzel Ward and Martin Emerson and Juan Thornhill and Grant Delpit out there. I mean, you might have the look that you want that way. So I'm very anxious to see when we get down to the Greenbrier what we're going to be able to see. And what I don't know yet is what are we going to be able to show the fans? Part of going down to the Greenbrier for them might be, hey, let's keep some things under wraps. Let's keep some people guessing and not give away the keys to the castle too early.
With training camp getting underway in West Virginia Saturday, you'll be there all as long as the team is. What would be good signs? If you see this, if you hear this, what would make you think, yeah, that it's heading in the right direction? And I'll ask you the other thing. If you start hearing this, it's like, man, they need to tweak some things.
Well, you don't want to hear about a lot of interceptions when Deshaun Watson is out there. You don't want that. You want him to be going to the right place with the ball. You want the receivers to be developing chemistry with him. And you don't want these really great DBs to be grabbing those footballs. So that's one thing that you don't want to see. Now, if the other quarterbacks are throwing a few interceptions, you can live with that. But you want Deshaun to be clean and sound. Those are some things. You want, you want the defensive line to show that it is going to be a dominating force this season, that even though they're not going to be able to sack the quarterback or even in most cases make too much contact and try to rush the passer, you do want to see that they're getting that pressure and that they can get home in the event or when they're allowed to. So, those are some things that you're going to be looking at. And, even like players like Jerome Ford, what is Jerome Ford going to be able to do in place of Kareem Hunt? How does Elijah Moore look with his new football team? And just so many things to look at.
Before I let you go, AFC North, by all accounts, I think you and I both agree it's going to be really tight. What do you think's the determining factor as to who wins that division, the Browns division?
Well, I think it's going to be quarterback play and then health. I mean, those two things probably in that order. The best quarterback is going to go out there and seize the moment, and then you just have to stay healthy. You cannot have your key guys getting hurt. And, if they can do those two things, they're going to be right in the thick of it up until the end.
And you are in Greenbrier. You'll be doing stuff on Twitter as well as filing reports for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Take us through where people can find what you're doing as you go down Saturday for the start of training camp.
Yeah, so, we'll just be doing as much as we possibly can, just like we would do up here for the most part. So, we'll have everything. We'll be on cleveland.com. We'll do a daily podcast like we always do. We'll do daily videos. I'll have things out on Twitter, probably threads as well. And we'll just try to keep that content coming.
Mary Kay Cabot, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Mary Kay.
Thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot, again, make sure you check her out. She will be down in West Virginia starting Saturday, covering the Browns at training camp. We're going to step aside, continue talking Browns. Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. The Browns made it official, kind of announcing a new alternate uniform, alternate helmets. They did so with this release.
The Cleveland Browns have always been the underdog, always doubted and rarely respected. It goes all the way back to 1950, the team's first year in the National Football League. They had just won 4 All-American Football Conference championships in a row, boasting a near-flawless 52-4-3 record. But that didn't matter. The pundits, they thought they were a joke, no match for the big, bad NFL. These guys sure weren't listening. They went on a rampage, all the way to an NFL championship in their first season. Old attitudes reborn, old threads reimagined. Some traditions are destined to return, and that time is now.
So there's a look at the Browns' Whiteout series. They'll wear them Week 2, Monday Night Football against the Steelers. Week 6 against the 49ers. Week 17, Thursday Night Football against the New York Jets. A tip of the cap back to the 50s. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily. Casey, I expect Marion Motley to be running around in those.
Man, that's such a clean look. Those things are crisp, you know. And I was already in love with the 46 throwback jerseys they wore in 2021. But to pair them with that white helmet with reverse striping like that's chef's kiss, you know. And just imagine if they were to be able to put a beat down on the Steelers in week 2, how much better they'll look to us after that.
Yeah, they might want to wear them every week if they go out and do that. All right, this is from NFL.com, ranking the top combos in 11 key positions. Interior offensive linemen, Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller, ranked number 1. Nick Chubb is talented running back, but Bitonio and Teller surely deserve credit for Cleveland's continued success in the run game. Browns have finished 6th or better in rushing yards each of the past 3 seasons. Edge rushers, number 1 again, Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith. The addition of Smith to a front line that already featured Garrett could make new defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz's wide 9 scheme an absolute nightmare for offensive coordinators around the league. Casey, offensive coordinators, how do you think the quarterback feels? You got 2 guys that are speed rushers. You can throw Obo out there. It's like a track meet to the quarterback.
Yeah, it's going to be something to see right there. Going to have a no holds barred in the backfield, a little team meeting back there with the quarterbacks. They can't be happy to see the Browns on their schedule with that kind of pressure coming off the edge. And think about how Jim Schwartz feels. He's been coaching defense for 30 years, and he hasn't had a duo like this, you know. And that says something. I mean, he's had some nice edge rushers, but to have that pair right there together, that's got to be something special for him to come in and know he has that clay to work with.
Well, and you know, let's throw the third in there. Okunrankwo is a young ascending guy who, you know, figures to step in for Zadarius Smith whenever, you know, his time with the team is done.
Yeah, we've always referred to it as the Tack McKinley role. I think we're going to have to change that after this year to the Ogbo role or Double O or however they want to phrase it. He's a different type of rusher, too. He's going to be more of that stand-up guy and provide that almost 3-4 outside linebacker feel, the way he can come off the edge. And it gives like a change of pace. And you're also going to see him with Zadarius when Zadarius kicks down inside on 3rd and longs. You know, it's going to be a race to get to the QB.
Yep, and then we'll go back and the 2 tackles, you know, I combined them. Bitonio and Teller have been real good. You know, Teller, I know, had a rough year. Again, if you have a lower leg injury as an offensive lineman, it's awfully tough to do much.
Yeah, I love seeing the guys up front get some love, you know, especially those guys that are not at premier positions to get recognized. And I think you'd probably have to go back to the 90s Cowboys to find 2 guards on the same team at this kind of level. And even though Teller kind of struggled last year, he still got named to the Pro Bowl based on his previous body of work. You know, I think people kind of refer back to that, and that name sticks out to them when they were looking at him. And Bitonio, what else can you say? I mean, we're talking about a guy's on his 10th season now, you know, all with one team, and you got to feel good for him. You know, he's been here through the lowest of the lows, you know, and survived and to the point where now he's thriving, and he seems to be just stacking great year on top of great year. Now he's all pro back to back, you know. It's a very impressive duo, and it's the strength of the offensive line by far.
All right, this is from CBSSports.com, predicting the last place team in each NFL division for 2023. For the AFC North, they go with the Browns. The rationale, kind of head-scratching, though. Browns weren't able to make many offseason moves as Deshaun Watson's acquisition cost 3 first-round picks plus 5-year, $230 million fully guaranteed extension absorbed much of their maneuverability. Okay, if you want to say that. They added Juan Thornhill, Zadarius Smith, Obo Okunrankwo, Dalvin Tomlinson, Elijah Moore, Marquise Goodwin, Rodney McLeod, Jordan Akins, Maurice Hurst. Most of them at positions that they really needed with wide receiver and defensive line. And if you want to look at it as a $230 million acquisition fee, it's your first full season with Deshaun Watson, so you added a new starting quarterback. I'm not sure that the facts kind of fit the narrative that you're trying to cram in there.
Yeah, I just can't with this narrative. to me, that's just lazy. That's not understanding the scope of things. If anything, Andrew Berry should get an award for being hamstrung with that contract and being able to bring that talent in. And if this thing goes south, it isn't going to be for the lack of talent that was acquired this offseason. I would argue, look league-wide, who else brought this much talent in? And we're talking about a roster that already had a good base level of talent with elite players at premier positions. To me, this is a laughable take.
Yeah, and I get it. They didn't sign any of the top 10 free agents, but you had Myles Garrett, you had Denzel Ward, you had Nick Chubb, you had Bitonio, you had Teller. You had a good core, and you still addressed needs. Isn't that the definition of a really good GM?
The cupboard wasn't bare, and they still stocked with all the extras. You know what I mean? To me, I don't know. If you're going to point to something, this isn't going to be it. You're not going to say that they just weren't able to bring the talent in that they needed to win. They got the players they needed at the positions that needed to have it. To me, it was textbook, and they did it without giving up the farm for really anything. I think Tomlinson's probably the biggest chunk, you know what I mean? But you had to do something in that position, so that's the reason he got what he got. But if you're just looking across the board, they were able to get value, and add players that we're talking about now. The Browns have the #1 edge duo. Well, that's because you went and traded for Zadarius Smith. You didn't even give up a pick. You just pick swapped. You know what I mean? It was excellent maneuverability, and I can't get there with this take.
Yeah, I'm with you. Again, it'll prove itself out on the field, so we'll see. But yeah, I couldn't agree less with a rationale for that. Casey Kinnaman, Dog Pound Daily, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, top 5 quarterbacks in need of a bounce back. We'll tell you who Rich Eisen thinks they are. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily. Rich Eisen, national NFL pundit, talking about top 5 quarterbacks who need a bounce-back season.
It's been a while since this guy's had a Pro Bowl season. We're all assuming he's the same Pro Bowl guy. And you can cut him if you want a little bit of slack, because he had a self-imposed and then NFL-imposed sabbatical that kept Deshaun Watson out of the National Football League for quite some time. His own doing. And then he comes back last year and he finishes up the season for the Browns, and he looked mediocre, is the only way to put it. And you could sit here and say, well, that is not fair, because he hadn't played in a while, and then he had to pick things up in the middle of the season. I need to see Deshaun Watson have a bounce-back season. The Cleveland Browns put a ton of eggs in this man's basket, and they also put a lot of their capital with their fans in that basket. So not just the capital out of their bank account, but some of the capital with their fans figuratively in Deshaun Watson's basket. Got to see him have a bounce-back season and look like the guy who was taking the Texans to the playoffs. If that guy shows up in Cleveland, then we can kind of rearrange potentially some of the AFC North furniture. Maybe even in the state of Ohio. How about them apples? Because as you know, Burrow's had a problem beating this team.
Casey, if he gets back to the guy that's leading the Texans to the playoffs, you can rearrange the furniture in the AFC.
Yeah. Not just the state of Ohio. You can take that out to Kansas City as well. And that's a fair take by Rich. That's exactly what needs to have happen. And just not even like, from the Browns' point of view, of course, but for Deshaun. I mean, think about everything that he's went through in the last 2 years. The only way to move forward and get past this is to win, is to stack wins. And of course you want to compile statistics and stuff, but that isn't enough. If he were to have the season he had in 2020, but the Browns only win 4 games like the Texans did in 2020, that will not be enough. The narrative will still be there. This team needs to win. And if anyone who's been following sports for long enough knows, like it literally winning will cure all. I'm old enough to remember what Mike Tyson went through, and now he's a celebrated figure. I've seen what Ray Lewis was accused of, and fast forward 1 year, and he's going to Disney World holding a trophy. Over time, man, you're not going to like silence everyone. You're not going to win some people over, but like if you can just stack wins, you can move forward, and that's what Deshaun Watson has to do this year. Yeah,
I would agree with you. And again, I think it's more likely that he does than he doesn't. I won't guarantee anything, but talent usually wins out over anything, and he's got a lot of talent. This also from CBSSports.com. 5 AFC head coaches under the most pressure in 2023. They're ranked from 1 to 5. Number 1, Josh McDaniels, Las Vegas. Number 2, Brandon Staley from the Chargers. 3 is Kevin Stefanski from the Browns. 4, they say Bill Belichick from New England. And 5, Robert Saleh from the New York Jets. Their rationale, it looked like Stefanski was the head coach the Browns were waiting for after he went 11-5, took Cleveland to the playoffs in his first year. However, the Browns are 15-19 since. Stefanski, along with really the entire organization, is under pressure because of Deshaun Watson, too. Couple of things about that. There is only pressure when there are expectations. So there's pressure for Brandon Staley because he made it to the playoffs and didn't win. There's pressure for Robert Saleh because he has Aaron Rodgers. There's pressure for Kevin Stefanski because he has Deshaun Watson. The 15-19 since that first year, well, let's see. Your starting quarterback, Baker Mayfield, played with a busted-up, non-throwing shoulder, and you had a backup quarterback in Jacoby Brissett who started the first 11 games. Quarterback play matters. That's why Brandon Staley's under pressure. That's why they traded what they traded to get Aaron Rodgers, who's 40-something years old. Yeah, he's under pressure, but I'd rather have a 27-year-old starting quarterback than a 42-year-old starting quarterback.
Yeah, it's just the weight of expectations. Anytime an organization sells the farm to go get a player, especially a quarterback, that automatically places pressure on the coach. You didn't make that move to stay the same. You made it to do better, and especially if you get someone who was viewed as previously being elite, you need to see that coach match that, you know what I mean, and make this thing, the trajectory needs to go up. So, yeah, there's pressure on him, but I think that's from the outside. From the inside, he's got to worry about wins, man. It's just week over week. You just got to keep stacking, keep your head down, trust your process. If you have a good process, over time you'll have good results. That's just what it is. So barring some crazy injury, the expectation is to win. And if those expectations aren't met, then there will be consequences. We saw this play out last year in Denver, where you got a head coach, Nathaniel Hackett, who was brought there to lure a different quarterback in. When that didn't work, they threw everything at Russell Wilson, got him there. What happened? It didn't go well. Well, they weren't going to move on from Russell Wilson, they're going to move on from Nathaniel Hackett. Stefanski's kind of in that position this year, but I think everything's in place that if it doesn't go well, there needs to be questions asked. But I also think the expectation is for them to win. So you just need to meet the expectation.
The other thing is a lot's made of the whole Deshaun Watson acquisition. Keep in mind, the guy's 27. A 3-time Pro Bowl quarterback in the NFL who is that young doesn't become available very often, if ever.
No, it never happens. That's the reason they moved mountains to get him, is because that scenario doesn't present itself. So when it did, they went all in. They pushed all the chips in the middle of the table because the goal is to win the Super Bowl. How do you do that? Well, you got to stack your team with premier position talent, and there's not a more important position in all professional sports than your quarterback. So it makes sense to go all in at that position. And if you believe you have everything in place, you make that move 10 times out of 10.
This one from Dog Pound Daily. 3 players that must improve for the Browns in 2023. Number 3, Jedrick Wills, left tackle. Number 2, Denzel Ward, cornerback. and number one, Deshaun Watson, quarterback. We've already talked quite a bit about Deshaun Watson. Yeah, Denzel Ward, I think he's going to improve because of what Jim Schwartz is going to ask him to do. Jedrick Wills, man, I hope they can unlock him. I liked the pick when they made it. He hasn't lived up to being that 10th pick in the NFL draft.
Yeah, for Jedrick, it kind of feels different. It feels like he needs this for himself. Like the team didn't lose because he wasn't good enough. He's average. He's played average, and that's good enough for the team to win. You know, but for him, if he ever wants to move forward with his career, he does need to unlock that level. He needs to put it together and just be consistent, because the flashes are there, but just as the flashes are there, so are the dips. He just needs to level off. If he does that, he'll be just fine. When you look at someone like Denzel, I think it's a different situation, because he was asked to do something that he wasn't comfortable with as far as playing off coverage. He's going to be able to do what he does best in mere wide receivers with Jim Schwartz, you know, and he had a very precarious 2022. He played bad at first. He got off to a bad start, I think we could all agree, but he found himself throughout the season. We're talking about a player who had 2 defensive touchdowns. Like, it was just this immense letdown, you know? And once again, it's the weight of expectations. He was paid like a top flight corner, so he's expected to play like that. Well, with the pieces that are in place, the pass rush that's there, and the way that Schwartz calls defense, you know, I think you're going to see the very best of Denzel in 2023.
I agree with you. And, you know, think of it this way. You paid him like he was a shutdown corner, and then you wouldn't let him be a shutdown corner. That's what made no sense to me.
Yeah, it's malpractice. To have the talented cornerback that you had and to play them the way they played them, it was just so passive. And I don't think there is a way that Schwartz looks at what happened last year and just follows suit. You know, I think you're going to get to see them up at the line, mugging receivers and dictating, you know, and that's the kind of corners that you have. Let him play. If you let him play like that, man, it makes everyone's job a lot easier.
Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnaman from Dog Pound Daily. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. I was doing a little exercise about realigning divisions, but only in the AFC. I put Bengals in the AFC South and took the Colts and put them in the AFC North. I swapped Ravens into the AFC East and Bills into the North, Dolphins into the AFC South, and Titans into the AFC East. I just thought it would be a fun little exercise to try. AFC West seems pretty accurate. I could go down all day on realignments, but just giving you a few examples. Do you think my realignments make sense? Thanks.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, I don't think the NFL will realign. They want to keep the Steelers and the Bengals and the Browns and actually the Ravens. There's the rivalries that exist, and they want to even feed into that more.
Yeah, I love thought exercises like this, though, you know, and I've done this particular exercise in the past. I didn't make as many moves as he did. I think geographically, if you're looking at it, I think it's logical. You're going to take Miami out of the East and put them in the South. And then you can take Indy and you can put them in the North and Baltimore over in the East. And geographically, I think that makes the most sense. Although you could do what this caller said, and like it would make things interesting, but it would take away from the rivalries. And the NFL is not about to do that. You know, there's a reason Dallas is never moving out of the NFC East, even though they're nowhere near the East. You know, it's money, and that's what drives everything. But I always enjoy thought exercises like this.
So think about this. 3 of the teams in the AFC North have been spawned off two of the other ones. So the Browns, you know, Paul Brown started the Bengals, and then they moved the Browns and they created the Ravens. So just let that sink in for a minute.
Yeah, I think the AFC North is the most rivalry-filled division because of that. You got the Browns and Steelers, which is as an old rivalry. It always makes the top 10 no matter what. But then the other ones, you literally have Browns, Steelers, and then two teams that were spawned by the Browns. Like, it's the most interwoven division in all of professional sports, really. And it makes it. I call it the NFL's blood and guts division. You know, the AFC North. There's a lot of rivalry to be had there.
All right, this is kind of interesting. So it's Madden's top 10 wide receiver rankings, and this is from Adam Schefter. Jefferson is number 199. That's the highest you can get. Tariq Hill, 98. Devontae Adams, 397. Diggs and Cooper Kupp tied for fourth at 96. Jamar Chase, sixth at 94. DeAndre Hopkins, now a Titan, seventh at 93. McLaurin, 92, and tied for ninth, A.J. Brown and Amari Cooper at 91. So Cooper, a top 10 wide receiver according to this ranking, which I think he's really underrated by most of those ranking things. I think top 10 to 15 is probably fair.
Yeah, I think this is completely fair. And I could even see him, if you're looking at the receivers, particularly on that list, I think maybe up to 8 is where you could argue his position, but I think 10 is very fair. You know, Madden's putting some respect on Amari Cooper's name. I just wonder if this is going to put to rest any of the he's not a number one conversation that I saw floating around after DeAndre signed. It was like the people were complaining that the Browns maybe lacked a true number one, and that's laughable to me. Cooper's been a number one everywhere he's been, you know, and I think it's because there's not a lot of flash with Cooper that he doesn't really get that recognition. He's an A+ route runner who's literally a B+ at everything else. You know what I mean? He's a quarterback's best friend, super consistent. His routes are precise. He's going to be where he's supposed to be, when he's supposed to be there. He's going to be on schedule, and he's not a diva. You don't have to feed anything into him. He's just going to take what's given, you know, and he's the perfect receiver for this team. Yeah,
a guy that appears to really want to win more so than anything else, which is kind of interesting. All right, Pro Football Focus, 50 best players in the NFL right now. They unveiled 31 to 40 today. 2 of them are Browns. Nick Chubb, another guy that just wants to win, 37. Aided by an excellent Browns offensive line, Chubb finished third in the league in rushing last season, averaging 5 yards a carry, per attempt, breaking 83 tackles along the way. And number 40, we've talked about this guy already, Joel Bitonio. Always flown a little under the radar compared to the other guards at the position. His play matches the elite at the position over the last few years. Bitonio earned an 87.5 overall grade last season, allowed 20 total pressures in 17 games. And I've said it on the show a couple of times, a couple more seasons at the level he's at, and he's got one of them fancy gold jackets that Joe Thomas got.
Yeah, he can join Joe in Canton, you know, and I think it's poetic. Since '99, this team hasn't had that kind of consistency. You've had Joe Thomas, and now if you look, man, now you got Joel walking in his 10th season, and he's just starting to stack these all-pros like right now. I think early in his career, he was kind of overshadowed by players like Marshall Yanda, you know what I mean? But now that we're in this part of his career, I think he's going to play in Cleveland as long as he wants to. You know, as long as he wants to keep playing football, I think there'll be a spot for Joel Bitonio. But when you look at like Nick Chubb, and there's been a lot of talk over the last day about how the running back position has been devalued, and I think it even reflects in this ranking. A player of Nick Chubb's skill and ability, if we're talking this in the 2008, he's a top 10 player in the league, you know. But because that position has been devalued, you're seeing him come in at 37, which isn't a knock. I mean, this is the most elite level athletes in the world are playing in the NFL. And he's considered the 37th best player. There's no slide in that. But just given what he's able to do with the ball in his hands, he is truly special. I mean, you look over the course of history in the NFL, players that average over 5 yards a clip. I mean, it's Jim Brown, it's Barry Sanders. You know, I think the outlier there is probably Jamal Charles. The sample size is big enough with Nick now, I think, just to recognize his greatness. This isn't a fluke. This is a guy who's a workhorse who the other team knows getting the ball, and he's still getting over 5 yards a clip. and people will point to the offensive line, which is great, and that's a good symbiotic relationship they have. But the fact that he's breaking 83 tackles tells you he's not a product of the offensive line. He is that good.
I'm curious to see how he does when they spread it out a little bit, because you figure there's going to be fewer people in the box. He's not somebody, 83 broken tackles says, I don't go down the first guy that hits me. So, and you're going to have smaller guys on the field.
Yeah, I think he's waiting for that too. He's waiting to see how it looks too, because he hasn't had a chance to see it. He's been the focal point. And it's, I think you're going to get a lot of that in fourth quarters this year when teams know you're going to run. But if this passing offense is able to take off, it's just going to lighten everything up and just present more opportunity. And I seen where Stump Mitchell was talking. He thinks Nick can average 6 yards a carry. I'm right there with Stump Mitchell. I think that is definitely on the table in 2023.
I agree with you. He's been running 8 and 9 man boxes. I don't think you're going to see too many of those with Deshaun Watson and some of the wide receivers. Casey Kinnaman, always great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnaman, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff with Dog Pound Daily. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.